School counselors. What's the most shocking thing a student has confided that you legally couldn't ignore? I've been a high school counselor for 12 years. I thought I'd heard it all. Abuse, neglect, suicidal ideation, eating disorders. Kids confide things that would break most adults, but nothing prepared me for what Madison shared with me that Tuesday afternoon in March. A junior, quiet but not invisible she was. Straight A's, debate team, college-bound, the kind of student who slips through cracks because she doesn't cause problems. When she knocked on my office door during lunch, I assumed it was about course scheduling or college applications. "Mrs. Patterson," she said, closing the door behind her with unusual deliberation. "I need to tell someone something, but I'm scared of what happens next." I gestured to the chair across from my desk, the same one where hundreds of students had shared their secrets over the years. "Whatever it is, we'll figure it out together." She sat down, hands trembling slightly. I noticed she'd been biting her nails, something I'd never seen her do before. Dark circles under her eyes suggested she hadn't been sleeping. "You have to report certain things, right? Like if someone's being hurt, if you're in immediate danger." "Yes, but let's talk about what's going on first." Madison stared at her hands for a long moment. When she looked up, her eyes were filled with tears she was fighting to hold back. The composure she usually maintained was cracking. I could see the weight of whatever she was carrying. "My dad isn't who everyone thinks he is. Her father was Dr. Richard Hayes, respected pediatrician, deacon at their church, coached Little League for 15 years. The kind of man people trusted with their children, the kind who smiled at school board meetings and donated to every charity fundraiser. His office walls were covered with thank you cards from grateful families. He was planning to run for city council next year. He's been experimenting on kids." The words hit me like ice water. "What do you mean by experimenting?" "At his practice after hours, kids whose parents think they're getting routine checkups." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "He drugs them, takes pictures, does things to them while they're unconscious." My blood ran cold. My training kicked in, but this was beyond anything I'd encountered in over a decade of counseling. "Madison, how do you know this?" "I found his computer, hidden files, videos." She pulled out a flash drive with shaking hands. Hundreds of them, kids from our school, from around town, some as young as 6 years old. The flash drive felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds when she placed it on my desk. My hands shook as I reached for my phone to call the police, but Madison grabbed my wrist with surprising strength, her fingernails digging into my skin. "Wait, there's more. He's not working alone." The desperation in her voice made my stomach drop. This wasn't just about one predator. This was something bigger, more organized, more terrifying than I could have imagined. "Who else?" I managed to ask, though I wasn't sure I wanted to hear the answer. "Principal Morrison, Coach Peterson, Officer Jenkins from our school resource program." She took a shaky breath, her whole body trembling now. "And others. So many others." That's when she told me something that made my entire world collapse. "They have a schedule, Mrs. Patterson. Different kids, different days. Dad keeps spreadsheets tracking which children respond best to which sedatives. He documents everything like it's medical research. Heart rates, blood pressure, recovery times. There are charts on his office wall that look legitimate, but they're tracking abuse patterns." I felt nauseous. The clinical nature of what she was describing made it somehow worse. This wasn't impulsive predation. This was systematic, organized evil disguised as healthcare. "Madison, this is incredibly serious. We need to contact authorities, immediately." "Which authorities?" she asked, her voice hollow. "Officer Jenkins is the authority here. And his partner, Detective Morrison?" "Yeah, Principal Morrison's younger brother brings his own kids to Dad's practice regularly. They all have family dinners together." The family connections hit me like a physical blow. Our small town's interconnected relationships, which usually felt comforting and safe, had become a web of protection for predators. Every system designed to protect children had been corrupted. "The state police," I said firmly, though my voice was shaking. "We call the state police." Madison shook her head slowly like she'd already considered this. "Dad has connections there too. He went to medical school with Captain Miller's brother. They golf together every weekend at the country club. Dad's provided free medical care for half the state troopers' families." The scope of potential corruption was overwhelming. How many people were involved? How many were just looking the other way? How many were taking benefits in exchange for silence? "The FBI?" I said finally. "We call the FBI." Madison nodded, relief flooding her face for the first time since she'd entered my office. "I was hoping you'd say that, but Mrs. Patterson, there's something else, something much worse." I couldn't imagine what could be worse than what she'd already told me. "They're planning something big this weekend. A camping trip with the youth group from church. 12 kids are going, all of them from families Dad's been treating for behavioral problems." My heart stopped. "What kind of camping trip?" "Dad's organizing it personally. He told the parents it's a spiritual retreat for troubled teens. Kids whose parents are desperate for help. Kids from broken homes who nobody would miss right away if something happened." Full horror of what she was describing hit me. This wasn't just ongoing abuse. This was a planned mass assault on children, maybe worse. "The parents think it's legitimate," Madison continued, her voice breaking. "Dad's been building trust for months. Free counseling sessions, family dinners, community outreach. He convinced them their kids need intensive intervention away from negative influences. He even got Pastor Williams to co-sign the recommendation." "We have to stop this," I said, already reaching for my phone with trembling fingers. "There's more," Madison continued, pulling out a notebook filled with her careful handwriting. I think they're going to dispose of evidence. I heard Dad talking to someone about cleaning house and starting fresh in a new location. Camping trip wasn't just about assault. It was about elimination. What do you mean by starting fresh? Madison opened her notebook, revealing months of detailed documentation. I've been gathering evidence for 6 months. Dad got a job offer in Oregon. He thinks I don't know about it, but I've seen the paperwork. He's been slowly transferring patient files, liquidating investments, closing accounts. Coach Peterson submitted his resignation letter last week. Principal Morrison announced early retirement at the board meeting. They were all preparing to disappear. They're going to hurt those kids and then vanish, she whispered. And everyone will assume the children ran away from the camp or got lost in the woods. I'd already told the parents the area has no cell service, and they won't be able to contact their kids for 3 days. I dialed the FBI tip line with shaking fingers. While waiting for someone to answer, I asked Madison, "How long have you known about this?" 6 months, she whispered. I've been trying to gather evidence. I copied everything from his computer, recorded conversations, took pictures of the secret room in his office basement. I've been living with this knowledge every single day, pretending everything is normal. Secret room behind a false wall in the basement. Medical equipment, cameras, restraints, soundproofing. It looks like an operating room, but it's not for healing. There are hooks in the ceiling, examination tables with straps, drug storage, video equipment. It's set up like a professional studio. The clinical setup made my stomach churn. This wasn't opportunistic abuse. It was an organized operation with infrastructure and planning. Why didn't you come forward sooner? Tears finally spilled down her cheeks. Because I'm in some of the early videos when I was younger, maybe 8 or 9. I didn't remember it happening until I saw the footage. He convinced me it was normal medical procedure. Said I needed special treatment because I was gifted and had unique medical needs. My heart shattered for this brave girl who'd been victimized by the man supposed to protect her, then found the courage to expose him despite the personal cost. He used to tell me I was helping other children by participating in his research, she continued, her voice barely audible. Said the procedures would help him develop better treatments for sick kids. I believed him because he's my dad, because I trusted him completely. The manipulation was sickening, using a child's trust and desire to help others to facilitate their own abuse, while making them complicit in their victimization. The FBI agent who answered was Special Agent Rodriguez. I explained the situation as clearly as possible while Madison sat across from me, clutching the flash drive like a lifeline. Ma'am, I need you to understand the severity of what you're reporting, Agent Rodriguez said. We'll need to act immediately, but I need you both to remain calm and follow our instructions exactly. Can you tell me how many adults are directly involved in this operation? There's a camping trip this weekend, I said urgently. 12 children could be in immediate danger. We're taking this very seriously. How many adults are involved in this operation? I looked at Madison, who consulted her notebook. At least 8 that I know of for certain, she said. Dad, Principal Morrison, Coach Peterson, Officer Jenkins, Detective Morrison, Dr. Carril from the medical center, Pastor Williams from our church, and Mr. Henderson who runs the youth programs, but there are others. I've seen faces in the videos I recognize but can't place. Agent Rodriguez was silent for a moment. Ma'am, you're describing a significant criminal enterprise. We're going to need to coordinate with multiple agencies to ensure all children are protected and all perpetrators are apprehended simultaneously. There's something else, Madison added. They have clients, people who pay for specific types of content. I found emails with requests, ages, descriptions, activities. It's not just local. This is bigger than our town. The scope was expanding in real time. This wasn't just a local horror. It was connected to something much larger. Within an hour, 3 FBI agents arrived at our school. They'd contacted the state police headquarters directly to avoid any local law enforcement contamination. Madison and I were escorted to a secure location where she provided her evidence and testimony. The footage was worse than I'd imagined. Hours of systematic abuse involving dozens of children, all professionally filmed with multiple camera angles. The basement room at Dr. Hayes' practice was set up like a medical examination room combined with a professional studio. But what made it truly horrifying was the documentation. Detailed medical files on each victim, noting their responses to different drugs, their psychological profiles, their family situations. Everything was cataloged like legitimate research, complete with charts, graphs, and treatment protocols. They were running it like a business, Agent Rodriguez explained to me, while Madison gave her statement to another agent. Professional equipment, customer databases, financial records, even performance reviews of the perpetrators. This is one of the most organized child trafficking operations we've encountered. The medical setting provided perfect cover, she continued. Parents trusted Dr. Hayes completely. He could sedate children for routine procedures, and they'd wake up with no memory of what happened. The church and school connections gave them access to hundreds of potential victims. What about the camping trip? I asked. We're moving on that tonight. State police are surrounding the campground as we speak. We've also contacted the children's families with cover stories to ensure they're safe without alerting the perpetrators. Madison looked up from where she'd been giving her statement to another agent. Are the kids safe? They will be, Agent Rodriguez assured her. Thanks to your courage. As the investigation unfolded over the following days, the scope became clear. Dr. Hayes had been using his medical practice as a front for organized child sexual abuse for 8 years. The church camping trips, youth programs, and after-school activities were all recruiting grounds, designed to identify vulnerable children. The network had been selling footage to an international trafficking ring, making hundreds of thousands of dollars annually. They had clients worldwide who would pay premium prices for content featuring specific types of children with particular characteristics. The raids happened simultaneously at 6 p.m. on Friday. FBI teams hit Dr. E. Hayes' practice, his home, Principal Morrison's house, Coach Peterson's apartment, Officer Jenkins's residence, Detective Morrison's home, the church offices, the youth center, and several other locations. The camping trip was intercepted before any children were harmed. What they found was worse than anyone anticipated. The operation had been running for 8 years. Over 300 children had been victimized across that time period. The perpetrators had been selling footage to an international network, making hundreds of thousands of dollars that they'd laundered through legitimate businesses and charitable organizations. They'd been planning to relocate to another state and start fresh. But first, they needed to eliminate evidence, including several children who were getting old enough to speak out or remember what had happened to them during their younger years. Dr. Hayes had developed a sophisticated system of sedation protocols that created memory gaps in his victims. He'd been drugging specific children during routine checkups, then transporting them to the basement facility while they were unconscious. The children would wake up hours later in the main examination room with no memory of the missing time. The church camping trips served multiple purposes. They were recruiting grounds for vulnerable kids, but they also normalized overnight stays with trusted adults. Children who'd been to camps with Pastor Williams or Mr. Henderson were less likely to be suspicious when invited to special programs or individual counseling sessions. The basement of the medical practice contained a fully equipped studio and holding area. Children had been kept there for days sometimes, with their parents told they were at medical, conferences, or special training programs. The soundproofing was so complete that no one in the building above could hear anything. Principal Morrison had been providing access to school records, identifying children from troubled homes who wouldn't be missed quickly. He'd also been manipulating discipline records to justify removing certain children from classes for counseling sessions that were actually transportation to the medical facility. Coach Peterson used after-school programs to isolate victims. He'd created a mentorship program specifically designed to identify vulnerable children and gain their trust over months of grooming. His position gave him access to children's home situations and family dynamics. Officer Jenkins ensured any reports were buried and provided intelligence about which families were being investigated by social services. His access to police databases allowed the group to target children who were already in precarious situations and unlikely to be believed if they spoke out. Detective Morrison, Principal Morrison's brother, provided additional law enforcement protection and had connections throughout the state police system. He'd been redirecting investigations and ensuring any reports about suspicious activity were lost or ignored. The investigation expanded rapidly. The FBI discovered connections to similar operations in 7 other states. The network had been operating for over a decade, with Dr. Hayes' group being one of the most profitable and well-organized cells. Financial records revealed that the group had generated over $2 million in the past 3 years alone. They'd been investing the money in legitimate businesses, real estate, and even college funds for their own children, creating a twisted irony where they profited from abusing other people's kids to benefit their own families. They found evidence that the group had been planning to expand internationally, with Dr. Hayes scheduled to establish a medical mission in Southeast Asia that would have provided access to impoverished children with even less protection and oversight. The customer database contained over 500 active subscribers from around the world with detailed profiles of their preferences and purchase histories. The FBI was able to trace many of these clients, leading to arrests across multiple countries. Dozens of arrests were made across multiple states. The financial records revealed a sophisticated money laundering operation that had moved millions of dollars through legitimate businesses, charities, and investment accounts. The trials began 8 months later. I testified about Madison's disclosure and the courage it took for her to come forward knowing the personal cost. The defense attorneys tried multiple strategies, painting her as a troubled teenager seeking attention, questioning the authenticity of the evidence, claiming the men were being framed by a sophisticated conspiracy. But the evidence was overwhelming. The videos, financial records, victim testimonies, physical evidence from the basement facility, communications with international clients, and detailed documentation of the entire operation created an airtight case. Dr. Hayes received life in prison without the possibility of parole on 47 counts, including child sexual abuse, human trafficking, racketeering, and conspiracy. Principal Morrison, Coach Peterson, and Officer Jenkins Each received sentences of 40 to 60 years. Detective Morrison got 45 years. Pastor Williams and Mr. Henderson received 25 to 30 years each. Dr. Corral, who had provided medical expertise and pharmaceutical access, received 35 years. Several other accomplices, including parents who had sold access to their own children in exchange for drugs or money, received lengthy prison terms. The financial facilitators and international distributors faced federal charges that would keep them imprisoned for decades. The international connections led to arrests in Canada, Mexico, Germany, Thailand, and the Philippines. The network had been larger and more sophisticated than anyone initially realized. Madison herself went through extensive therapy to deal with both her own victimization and the trauma of exposing her father. The FBI arranged for her and her mother to relocate to another state for their safety, as the network had connections that reached far beyond our small town. Her mother, Sarah, had been completely unaware of her husband's activities. The revelation destroyed her world as thoroughly as it had Madison's. She had trusted him completely, even when Madison had tried to hint at strange things happening during medical appointments. "I thought she was just nervous about doctor visits," Sarah told me during one of our sessions before they relocated. "Richard always explained everything so logically." He said Madison was prone to anxiety and needed special care. When she'd ask questions about why she felt sleepy after appointments, he'd say it was a normal reaction to stress. Gaslighting had been systematic and professional. Dr. Hayes had convinced his own wife and daughter that Madison's confusion and fragmented memories were signs of psychological problems that needed his specialized care before they left town permanently. Madison stopped by my office one last time. "Mrs. Patterson," she said, "I need you to know something." "What's that?" "You saved more kids than just the ones on that camping trip." The FBI said they found evidence Dad was planning to expand. He was recruiting other doctors in other towns. There were plans for medical missions overseas, partnerships with international adoption agencies, connections to orphanages in developing countries. She handed me a letter. "For when you doubt yourself, for when you wonder if you did the right thing." I opened it after she left. It read, "Thank you for believing me immediately. Thank you for acting without hesitation. Thank you for choosing the children over protecting the adults. You taught me that one person speaking up can change everything. But more importantly, you showed me that there are adults in this world who will fight for kids like me. That knowledge saved my life in ways you'll never understand. I'm going to be a counselor too someday because of you. But more than that, you showed me that the world has people who will listen when children need help. That's something I'll carry forever." That was 3 years ago. Madison is now in college studying psychology with a focus on trauma counseling and victim advocacy. She stays in touch, occasionally sharing updates about her healing journey and her advocacy work with other survivors. She's become a powerful voice for victims' rights, speaking at conferences and working with law enforcement to improve protocols for handling child abuse cases. Her strength and resilience continued to inspire everyone who meets her. The scandal completely destroyed our town's sense of security and innocence. Parents pulled hundreds of kids from the school district. The church disbanded entirely, with the building eventually being demolished. Several families moved away entirely, unable to cope with the associations and memories. Property values plummeted as the national media coverage made our town synonymous with the horrors that had occurred here. The economic impact lasted for years as businesses closed and tourism disappeared, but it also brought crucial awareness and change. New protocols were established for background checks. Mandatory reporting training was enhanced and expanded, and children throughout the region were educated about inappropriate conduct by authority figures. The school district implemented new policies requiring multiple adults to be present during any one-on-one interactions with students. Medical practices were required to have better oversight and monitoring systems, including mandatory video surveillance in all examination rooms. Law enforcement protocols were completely overhauled with outside oversight for any cases involving children and mandatory involvement of state or federal agencies for serious allegations. I still work as a counselor, though in a different district now. Every day I remember Madison's courage and try to create an environment where children feel safe to speak their truth, no matter how impossible or horrifying it might seem. The ripple effects continue to this day. The FBI investigation led to the discovery of similar networks in 12 other states and 4 countries. Over 800 children were identified as victims across the entire network, and more than 200 perpetrators were arrested worldwide. Madison's case became a model for how to handle complex disclosure situations. The FBI now uses elements of our approach as training material for agents dealing with similar cases. Educational institutions nationwide implemented new protocols for mandatory reporting. The emphasis shifted from simply reporting individual incidents to recognizing patterns that might indicate organized abuse. Her impact reached far beyond our small town. Congressional hearings were held about vulnerabilities in child protection systems. Legislation was passed requiring enhanced oversight of organizations with regular access to children. International law enforcement cooperation was strengthened to combat trafficking networks. The client database from Dr. Hayes' operation led to arrests and convictions on 4 continents. Madison's courage didn't just save the children who were immediate targets, it created a ripple effect that protected countless others who might have become victims of similar operations. Her final words to me before leaving town permanently stay with me every day. Mrs. Patterson, I need you to promise me something. If another kid like me walks into your office someday, believe them immediately. Don't wait. Don't hesitate. Don't worry about proof or consequences. Just believe them and act. I promised her then, and I keep that promise every single day because Madison taught me that sometimes the most unbelievable stories are the most important ones to believe. In the years since, I've had 3 other students come forward with serious allegations. Each time I remembered Madison's words and acted immediately. 2 cases resulted in arrests and convictions. The third was unfounded, but the child received the help they needed for other issues. Madison recently graduated summa cum laude with her psychology degree. She's starting graduate school in the fall, specializing in trauma therapy for child victims of organized abuse. She wants to develop better techniques for helping children recover from systematic victimization. She called me on the anniversary of that first day she walked into my office. Mrs. Patterson, she said, I need you to know that what you did that day didn't just save those 12 kids going on the camping trip. It saved me too. How so? Because you showed me that speaking the truth matters, that there are adults who will listen, that children's voices have power when the right people hear them. She paused for a moment. I was planning to kill myself after I told you. I figured they'd never believe me, that Dad would convince everyone I was lying, that nothing would change. But you believed me immediately. You acted without hesitation. You saved my life just by listening. That conversation reminded me why I became a counselor in the first place. It's not just about being there when children are in crisis. It's about being the adult who listens, who believes, who acts when action is needed. Madison's story changed everything for me. It changed how I approach every conversation with every student. It changed how I view my role in their lives. Because sometimes a child walks into your office carrying the weight of the world, and sometimes what they're carrying is the key to saving other children from unimaginable horror. The most shocking thing a student ever confided wasn't just what she told me, it was what her courage to speak that truth accomplished. Sometimes one voice can change everything.